All right, so this video wants to just introduce some of the basic principles of what we call cognition. Right, so in psychology, we look at the brain, all its functions, everything that it does, and then with that, there are three primary areas. All right, so thoughts, feelings, behavior. All right, so thoughts, feelings, behavior. So when we look at thoughts, the technical term for that is cognition. Right? So the study of like subfield of psychology, cognitive psychology, looks at our thoughts, the way we think about things, the way we process information, the way we try to interpret data and just understand in general the world around us. Right? So as we do that, there's a thing called metacognition. And so this is thinking about your thinking. Okay? Thinking about your thinking. And what this does is allows us to determine, are there certain patterns or ways in which we process information? Are there certain things that may interrupt that process or interfere with it from being effective? And we're going to find the answer to all that is yes. We tend to process information in very similar fashions. Right? So, for example, when we consider things like problem solving, right, there tend to be certain strategies that most of us employ, and we can see, all right, here is something where we're approaching a situation to see how can we understand what's going on, and then hopefully find a solution to that situation. Okay, so these can be things as simple as just I'm trying to make a decision about what to eat or what car to buy, right? Different levels of importance. It can be I have a problem and I need to solve it, right? So we can use something like trial and error, just very basic. I'm going to try different things until something works. Or if there's already a pattern in kind of a solution provided with an algorithm, I just need to follow this formula and boom, it's going to give me my answer, right? Is there a way for me to kind of approach the trial and error process more methodically and maybe eliminate things that are less likely, right? So sometimes we might refer to that as something like a heuristic, okay? So what we want to do is just identify what are some of these patterns that we have. But then as we identify things that help us make decisions, things that help us to solve problems, are there what we would call biases, cognitive biases that interrupt that process and prevent it from occurring the way it should? And again, the answer to that is yes. So we're going to see this in a number of different ways. All right. So one of the most common ones is what we call the confirmation bias. All right. So as information comes in, as we process things, we tend to already have a viewpoint about something. Right. We tend to maybe, let's use people as an example. We've met someone for the first time. We have this first impression. We say to ourselves, they are this type of person. And so every interaction we have with that person moving forward, all we're going to do is look for information to confirm what we already believe. And if something occurs that would push it back against that or counteract it in some kind of way, well, then we either ignore it completely or we find some kind of rationale or other excuse to ignore it, right? So when we look at things like political beliefs, right? Everybody has their certain beliefs, and we will look out and seek information that confirms what we already believe. And as people talk, if they say things that support what we believe, we're like, I like that guy, right? Or if they say something that goes against it, well, then again, we either ignore them or we try to find fault with something that they're saying, right? So that's what we mean by a confirmation bias, okay? One of the other ones that we might see is something called a paradox of choice, right? We like to think having a lot of options is good. It's not, right? I think about going to the Cheesecake Factory. Huge list of all the different cheesecakes, all of them delicious. The problem is I get overwhelmed, don't know which one to do, and whichever one I do end up choosing, there's something in the back of my mind that's going to nag at me. It's just going to keep saying to you, I wonder if you would have been happier with the other one instead, right? If you would have gone with one of these other things, okay? So that's something. We have something called the sunk cost effect, right? So the more time or energy or money or other kind of resources that we put into something, even if it's showing that it's not a good idea, we're likely to continue doing it, unfortunately, right? So there's a quote. I don't think it's actually attributed to anybody. It's just one of those things that you see written every once in a while. But it says, don't cling to a mistake just because you spent a lot of time making it. Okay, don't cling to a mistake just because you spent a lot of time making it. Okay? Another one might be what's called anchoring. Right, so you'll see this a lot with car sales. Right, so when you go to buy a car, you want to be the first person to kind of put a number out there, and as long as it's reasonable, at that point they're trying to talk you up, right? Instead of the car salesman putting the first number down out, and you're just trying to talk them down. There's a big difference there, right? So, for example, when the iPad was first coming out, Steve Jobs comes out, he explains kind of what it is and everything that it will do and how amazing it is. And he said, this is how much the price should be, right? $999, based on everything we just said, based on everything that goes into it and making it the machine that it is. This is the price. Okay? But then right after that, he was like, but we're going to sell it to you for $499. And so now you're thinking, oh my goodness, what a good deal. This thing's worth $1,000 and we're going to get it for $500. No, if we're being honest with ourselves, the price was always going to be $500. But once you hear that 1,000 and it went down to 500, we misinterpret that information. We don't necessarily read it correctly, right? So this is why we have to be very careful when you're trying to buy something off of Amazon, right? And all of a sudden you see, oh my goodness, this is 77% off right now. Well, how often is it at 77%? Like, is that the cost, the price they want to sell it to you anyway? Okay. So when it comes to our cognition, again, it refers to anything where we're processing information. We're trying to understand a little bit more about how we think about things. We want to determine what are the different factors, how that information is actually organized here within our brains as we use it on an ongoing basis. And then as we do that, what biases are present that might interrupt that process or keep it from being as effective as it could be.